Now, if you've been around on the internet long enough, or you're a Dark Knight fan, you've probably seen the phrase, you either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become a villain. Now, to some, it's the most quotable line from the Nolan Batman series. To others, also known as video game protagonists, it's their life's motto. That's right, the world of video games is full of characters who might have started their journey as heroes, but by the time they get to the sequel, well, their character arc has led them down the path of villainy. So let's have a chat about them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 video game heroes who became villains in the sequel. Number 10, Dr. Valen. XCOM 2. Now, the Good Doctor is one of the supporting members of the XCOM team and serves as the organization's research specialist. Unlike most of the characters from the first game, he doesn't make a physical appearance in the sequel, but this is because by the time the events of XCOM 2 roll around, your helpful lead scientist decides to switch sides and turn into a shadowy villain with a disturbing and enigmatic motive. In XCOM 2, your new team reveals that the Good Doctor mysteriously disappeared from the XCOM headquarters shortly after the aliens took over Earth, taking most of her research with her. The trail runs cold from here, but if you have the Alien Hunters DLC, you can actually find her secret lab, where she's teamed up with the occupying alien forces to experiment on 3 rulers of other conquered alien civilizations in order to enhance them and create new terrifying breeds to unleash onto the Earth. Her creations serve as the DLC's primary antagonists, but considering this is one of her many unethical experiments, maybe they should all actually be called victims of a far more insidious villain. Number 9, Dr. Madison Lee, Fallout 4. The primary antagonists of Fallout 4 are the Institute, an enigmatic group of scientists that conduct inhumane experiments on the population of the Commonwealth. The group is hidden deep underground and shrouded in mystery, and yet one of their members is actually a familiar face. Dr. Madison Lee is a researcher who makes her initial appearance in Fallout 3 as a potential ally. She works on Project Purity, a water purification effort in the capital wasteland, and depending on your choices, she can even help you complete the project alongside other scientists in order to make the wasteland a slightly better place. However, despite Dr. Lee's positive impact in Fallout 3, she ultimately became yet another Institute lackey in Fallout 4, performing cruel research on surfacers in the name of science. This change is a result of Madison Lee's distrust of the Brotherhood of Steel, which forces her to leave the capital wasteland and seek refuge among like-minded, if not slightly more sadistic, Institute scientists. Funnily enough, you can actually convince Dr. Lee to leave the Institute and rejoin the Brotherhood, but considering she builds a giant death robot for her new/old friends, it seems like she's doomed to become the villain in the sequel no matter what she does. Number 8, Richter Belmont, Castlevania Symphony of the Night. The Belmont family is the legendary clan of monster hunters from the Castlevania series who have acted as the protagonists of the franchise since its very beginning. The rare exception to this rule is Castlevania Symphony of the Night, where the mantle of the protagonist is taken by Dracula's son Alucard, and the hero of the previous game, Richter Belmont, becomes an unwilling thrall of his greatest enemy. Yes, in Symphony of the Night, the protagonist you played in Rondo of Blood makes a small appearance as one of the bosses helping Dracula reawaken. The cameo, although brief, is quite relevant to the plot, as it's Richter's capture that drives Alucard to set out into Dracula's castle and meet with the hero's ally, Maria. As for the boss fight itself, the battle with Richter is an odd but interesting experience, as the hunter is equipped with all of his gear from the previous game, giving you a glimpse into what the monsters must feel like when going up against a Belmont. And let's just say, it isn't pretty. The fight with Richter is considered one of the most difficult in the entire game, thanks to his huge damage output and insane reach. Long story short, do not mess with the Belmonts. Number 7, Hero of Kvatch, The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. The Daedric princes of the Elder Scrolls series are by no means good. Even those that are considered less evil don't mind playing with mortal lives for their amusement and to further their own selfish goals. This kind of sick, whimsical torture is exactly what Sheogorath subjects your character to in Skyrim. And the funny thing is, if you've played through Oblivion's Shivering Isles DLC, you know that it's technically your past self who plays with the fate of your character in this sequel. The legendary Hero of Kvatch, your character in Oblivion who helped stop the Oblivion Crisis, is actually Sheogorath, the Daedric Prince of Madness in the Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. This little bit of information is actually the main plot of the Shivering Isles DLC, where your character is transported to the Mad Prince's domain, and towards the end of your quest there, they switch places with Sheogorath, becoming the new ruler of madness and chaos. This transformation has its effect in Skyrim, where the new Sheogorath traps the Dragonborn inside the mind of a dead emperor, just because they don't feel like going back to his realm. Thanks, past self, you really are making me regret reloading after letting you die. Number 6, Orelia Hammerlock, Borderlands 3. Now, most characters on the cast of Borderlands undergo major changes throughout the series. Some turn from zeros to heroes, some become influential leaders or have their name turned into a legend, and some, like Orelia Hammerlock, switch allegiances and become infamous monsters. Lady Hammerlock is the playable DLC hero from Borderlands the pre-sequel, although most of the main characters in that game eventually turn into the villainous lapdogs of their employer Handsome Jack. Orelia is different in that the game alludes to her growing a conscience and eventually breaking off her involvement with Jack, only so that she can start her own corrupt enterprise in Borderlands 3. Yes, for all her heroics and defiant attitude towards Jack in the pre-sequel, Orelia inevitably takes a nosedive straight into the dark side, taking over the Jacobs Corporation with blackmail, assassination, and fraud, and then uses her new position as the CEO of a military corporation to aid the antagonists of the third game. The Vault Hunters are forced to take her down in the end, which is pretty disappointing considering how much she was teased to be a better person and how, in the end, she turned out to just be another corrupt businesswoman. Number 5. Anders, Dragon Age 2. Anders is the lovable mage companion from the Dragon Age series who became infamous due to his mind-blowing, or rather chantry-blowing betrayal in Dragon Age 2. Despite serving as the hero and fellow Grey Warden in the first game, as well as a companion in the sequel, towards the end of Dragon Age 2, Anders becomes public enemy number 1 as he decides the best way to make a plea for the maltreatment of his fellow mages is to set up bombs beneath your headquarters and setting them off without your knowledge. Cheers. The scale of destruction Anders brings about with the bomb and the war between the mages and the Templars that ensues shortly after already makes him responsible for immeasurable crimes against the world. But another villainous aspect of his betrayal is that Anders never consults you on his plan, even if you've romanced him, and no matter what you tell him after you discover it, he always chooses to let the world burn anyway. His goal of helping the mages is somewhat noble, I guess, but his literal execution makes him definitely a villain. But hey, at least he still loves his cat. That's something, right? Number 4. Nameless Hero, Arcania Gothic 4. The Nameless Hero is the protagonist of 3 out of the 4 Gothic games, and the only reason he doesn't make the 4th is because in Arcania Gothic 4, he turns into the game's primary antagonist. Yes, the same character that has been the beloved main character of the Gothic series for years, despite never even being given a name, undergoes an unwilling change into the main bad guy, just because the developers wanted a new protagonist. In the events of Gothic 4, the Nameless Hero is crowned the new king of the realm, named Rabar III, for saving it from peril on multiple occasions. He doesn't actually get to enjoy his well-earned promotion for too long though, as during one of his journeys across the world, he becomes possessed by the demon he banished in the first game, and the creature transforms him into a sadistic and cruel tyrant. The new protagonist, another nameless nobody, picks up the fight with the corrupted king after he slaughters his home village, setting forth the main story of Arcania. Well, maybe the king should have never gotten a name. It seems like in the world of Gothic, only anonymous people get to actually play the hero. Number 3. Minsk, Boulders Gate 3. Boulders Gate 3 has plenty of references to the older titles, including appearances from previous cast members and companions and allies. Jaheira, Saravok, and Minsk all show up in the third act of the game, except one of them gets to play a radically different role to the one they had in Boulders Gate 1 and 2. Contrary to his strong moral compass and knack for heroism, Minsk, the lovably unhinged berserker, turns into a villain in the third installment of the series. And this shift isn't caused by a change in Minsk's character, so much that it's the result of the not-so-gentle giant becoming brainwashed by the cult of the Absolute. After he gets captured while trying to infiltrate the cult with Jaheira, Minsk receives the Mind Flare parasite treatment, and the cult turns him into a confused gang leader who believes he's fighting crime while actually spreading it throughout the city. Thankfully, there is a way to cure Minsk of his affliction. After you defeat him, you can use the artifact to weaken the parasite's hold on his brain and then recruit him. It really is the best course of action, considering Minsk's brain is so damaged that he can barely operate it even without a parasite. Number 2. Ellie, The Last of Us Part 2. Ellie is the lovable protagonist of The Last of Us, who spends the first game traveling with Joel, capturing the hearts of both her companion and the game's fans with her undying curiosity and a knack for coming up with the perfect retorts to Joel's grumpy attitude. In Part 1, Ellie is just a sweet and fairly innocent kid, which is why her transformation into a vengeful mass murderer in the sequel is a pretty hard pill to swallow. Although Ellie is a playable protagonist in Part 2, her role in the story isn't really that of a hero. After Abby kills Joel right in front of her, Ellie embarks on a long journey of revenge, during which she goes on plenty of killing sprees, destroying entire communities and leaving a trail of bodies everywhere she goes. Her motivations are understandable, but given how many uninvolved people die because of her and how so many of them beg for their lives when she attacks them, it's fair to say that she's actually the villain of the sequel. She's definitely not the fun 14-year-old that we wanted to protect with our lives from the original, let me tell you that. And number 1, Arthus, World of Warcraft. King Arthus is perhaps one of the most important characters in the World of Warcraft lore. war. A legendary ruler and a hero of the human race, Arthus appears in Warcraft 3 as a playable character who tries to save his people from the ongoing Orc rebellion and a mysterious undead plague that encroaches upon his kingdom. He spends a large chunk of Warcraft 3 being your typical knight in shining armor and someone who truly does deserve to be called a hero, but that all changes when he suddenly picks up a cursed blade in Frostmourne, which transforms him into an undead himself and sets him on a path of villainy that culminates in his later appearances in World of Warcraft. After Arthus becomes a Death Knight, he rallies up the undead armies and becomes the dreaded Lich King, whom you and your friends in World of Warcraft have to take down, before he floods the world in corpses and kills every single living being. His villainous transformation is honestly one of the most iconic falls from grace in gaming. Ironically, it's also connected to World of Warcraft's own fall from grace with the release of the Shadowlands expansion and how that DLC completely butchered his legacy. Cheers for that. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 video game heroes who became the villain in the sequel. I hope you enjoyed that, and let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Instagram, where it's @RetroJ, but the O is a 0. Hope to see you over there. Hope you're treating yourself well, and I hope to speak to you soon. Big love. Bye.